From the western side, the Newcastle Ocean baths look attractive, with a lick of paint and repairs to the concrete cancer. But walk through and take a look from another angle and it's a very different view, still like a half-finished construction site.
Sadly, it should have been pulled down and just reconstructed in the first place. That hasn't happened now and we're stuck with what we've got. Sitting here idle for 3 years without trying to finish it off, I don't think is a good outcome.
According to Councillor Buman, it was a $4.4 million patch-up job on the facade. The baths are now part of Newcastle's Coastal Revitalisation Master Plan, and there's a concept for accommodation on the upper level with a cafe and change rooms underneath. Council says an early financial feasibility study has been completed, but heritage and design surveys are also needed. Meanwhile, there's finally some news on the upgrade of another important coastal asset, the bogey hole. According to Newcastle MP Tim Owen, the planned stairway and swimming platform have been approved by the State Heritage Office with some amendments, including reducing the size of the platform. A popular swimming spot in warmer months, the bogey hole has also been nominated as one of Australia's 7 wonders in a competition run by Jetstar. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
It was supposed to be an airborne comedy routine at a small air show at Barraba near Tamworth on Sunday, but it turned out to be anything but when the Pitts Special hit the ground hard, skidded into a fence and almost flipped.
Phil had a slight misjudgment and unfortunately hit the ground a little bit too hard and did some damage to himself and to the aeroplane.
Mr Unicum suffered a broken back, but thankfully no spinal cord damage and underwent surgery today.
Phil's well known as the best aerobatic training instructor in the country, and he's done this particular act thousands and thousands of times. But as you know, with air shows, things can go wrong.
With 30 years flying under his belt, the Hunter pilot has an impressive resume full of Australian and international titles. Former student and current flying partner Paul Bennett says the mishap shows that even the best in the business can have an off day.
I guess you could compare it to a racing car driver. There wouldn't be too many racing car drivers who haven't hit a fence.
Air safety officials will investigate the crash. The plane is a write-off, but thankfully Mr Unicum's legendary sense of humour remains intact.
The ever-changing Knights back at the table again.
I have the pleasure of announcing that Rick Stone has committed to the Knights for another 4 years.
Stone's future had been the centre of attention for 2 months. The club's mentor for nearly 2 years, now agreeing to work as Wayne Bennett's assistant from 2012.
It wasn't a tough decision for me, really. You know, this is, like I said, this is where I want to be, this is where my family is, and there's some exciting things happening here.
Nathan Tinkler's offer was one of 2. Stone happy to take a back seat despite interest from the Panthers.
I didn't really consider it, to be honest, and that's where I want to stay here.
And his intentions are clear.
I'd like to think I'll get the opportunity to coach this proud club again.
The Knights' sights now on re-signing Wes Nagama. The utility could be on his way to the Dragons.
It's been well documented that St George have made a play for him as well, but we'd like to think that we're the best club for Wes.
And he'll certainly have a point to prove against the Roosters on Sunday. The Knights will welcome back James McManus for the clash, with new star Ryan Stigg named at 5'8".
It's about backing his performance up now and no doubt he's going to do it.
Nat Wallace, NBN News. Branko Kalina's fitness plan is rolling on. All of his familiar faces will play at least 45 minutes in Trial 2 against Western.
It's important for tomorrow to get a game under our belt because we've got a 2-week break after that.
It's now confirmed The Jets will have 12 trial games before the A-League season, up from 5 last year. Australia's best young surfers have been on trial in northern New South Wales over the past week.
We've all learnt by hard experience now that you need a fair bit of paddle out time.
Surfing Australia handpicked the 13 to 16-year-olds as part of a program to find the sport's next big thing. Among them, Merriweather's Jackson Baker.
I've just learnt about where to sit in the break and like where to position yourself and stuff.
But you have to be a complete athlete these days to be able to get that World Championship.
19-year-old Liam Spears is already carrying the nation's hopes. His bags were packed this afternoon for Germany, where the 5-time national junior discus champion will represent Australia at a one-off World Athletics meet.
Feels excellent. It's the third time I've been selected and I wasn't expecting this at all. It came out of the blue.
Nat Wallace, NBN News.
The Bush Tucker Garden is a fantastic display of the resourcefulness of nature and what a rich food source and source of medicines that wetlands have been over time.
Newcastle Airport back in business and busy.
We are starting to see movement.
Much to the relief of passengers boarding 24 hours late, their travel plans thrown into chaos. When were you supposed to fly out?
2:40 yesterday, yeah.
We were supposed to head to the Gold Coast yesterday.
I was supposed to fly out yesterday to the Gold Coast and it was cancelled.
The first flight, a Gold Coast-bound Jetstar plane, took off mid-afternoon. The Qantas-Link service to Brisbane wasn't far behind.
Our flight was actually scheduled for 2:40 and it's been one of the only flights that's going at 2:40, so I'm praising God and saying thank you.
It was scheduled for 3:30 and since we've been sitting here it's come back to 2:45, so we're pretty pleased.
But Newcastle Airport's ability to get back on schedule will be hamstrung by its capital city cousins.
We're suggesting that hopefully things will be back to probably normal schedule by the start of tomorrow, but that will depend more on other airports and how they're progressing.
Lauren Bladwell, NBN News.
More than 9 months on from the horrific crash that claimed 2 lives, Edgeworth woman Karen Winter made her first appearance at Newcastle Local Court today. The 43-year-old is facing 10 charges, including manslaughter, dangerous driving occasioning death and driving while under the influence of drugs. Police allege Winter caused the deaths of local nurses Janet Sharples and Rebecca Weir on October 7 last year in circumstances amounting to manslaughter. The 2 pedestrians were hit while while waiting at traffic lights at the intersection of Main and Minmai Roads at Edgeworth. Officers also allege Winter suffered a fainting episode and was under the influence of prescription and prohibited drugs while driving the high-ace van. During the short court appearance, Magistrate Elaine Truscott adjourned the case to next Wednesday, when she'll decide whether it will go to trial. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
These men help make up the 18,000 apprentices who have trained with the company since it opened its doors in 1981. It originally did so because of a shortage of tradesmen to build the Bayswater Power Station, and 30 years on, not much has changed.
We still got a shortage of tradespeople, so I shudder to think how things would be if we hadn't been doing the work that we're doing.
For every advertised position, the HVTC receives hundreds of applicants. The problem is getting employers on board.
We need to be out there encouraging more employers to become involved.
Today, the company celebrated its birthday in traditional fashion. Its first 3 employees doing the honours.
It's a lot different from 30 years ago, turning up to work on the first day as the only employee.
A time capsule was also opened to mark the milestone 20 years after it was sealed.
Earlier uniforms and badges, and it just shows how the company evolved and grew.
Additional mementos were added to the capsule before it was placed back under a replica of the 3801 steam locomotive. Lauren Bladwell, NBN News.
He's still walking off ligament damage, but if you ask Tyrone Roberts, he's fit and ready.
I hope so, and it'll be a good contest this week.
Roberts was expected to play against the Panthers, but Ryan Stig got the call-up and produced a man-of-the-match debut. Stig has again been named as 5'8" for the Roosters clash, but coach Rick Stone has options on the bench, and Roberts wants his chance against one of the best.
Shutting down Carney if he's back this week. He played reserves last week, so it'll be a good contest to shut him down and hopefully get over him.
Meanwhile, Zeb Taya is still paying the price for this tackle back in round 4. In fact, it was neither. Taya was told he may have to retire due to bulging discs pressing against his spinal cord.
When you get told that you got a serious injury, like in the neck, like 2 bulging discs, it's not, it's pretty career-threatening.
A specialist has now given him hope of a return far earlier than expected in round 22.
Yeah, I'm confident. As the weeks have gone on, my neck feels better. It's not as tight as when I first came back from the Gold Coast.
Kevin Messam, NBN News. After their loss to Japan, scoring 3 unanswered goals against Yemen in Gosford was just what the Olyroos needed. Game 2 is in Newcastle tomorrow night, and coach Aurelio Vidmar remains cautious.
We still got to be extremely careful because, if Yemen get an early goal and then they're still in with a chance, so we can't take them lightly.
Don't expect former Jet Jason Hoffman to take it easy, especially after scoring a double on Sunday.
It's the same with every player. Once you start to play a fair bit, you start to get the confidence and the self-belief back, and I think he's certainly in that sort of frame of mind now.
The same goes for current Newcastle striker Marko Jezic. If recent form is anything to go by, he's overdue for a goal.
Always, setting up or scoring is a great feeling, but just to get a result would be even better.
And doing it in front of his home fans would be even more special.
Pretty much I say it's my second home. But, love Newcastle. It's been great to me so far, so just can't wait.
A win would see the Olyroos through to the next phase of Olympic qualifying, where 12 Asian teams are split into 3 groups. Kevin Messam, NBN News.
The year was 1986.
Newcastle detectives raided a flat in the beachside suburb of Bar Beach and arrested 22-year-old Mark Terence Woods.
These dramatic scenes followed a sickening attack on a 56-year-old woman. Woods broke into the victim's Cooks Hill home and raped her before driving to Merriweather Heights, where he subjected her to more sexual abuse, before locking her in the car's boot and setting it on fire. When she tried to escape, he stabbed her repeatedly.
It's so brutal, and so she's scarred.
Victims of crime advocate Robin Cottrell-Jones says the now 80-year-old is still frightened of Woods but has accepted his release.
She is very philosophical about the acceptance that this is the way the system has decided, and she's in fact the most inspiring person.
Despite more incidents of a sexual nature in jail, authorities have determined Woods has done all he can there towards treatment. He must abide by a string of release conditions, including staying away from the Newcastle region.
Hopefully the rules that have been put in place will keep him away from her, and I really hope he stays away from everybody else as well. That's the part that worries me.
It's the Gidley era, two famous league brothers now leading the new look Newcastle Knights. The older of the pair, Matt, is the club's CEO.
I was part of leadership groups in my footy career, for about the last 5 or 6 years. I think there's a lot of transferable traits that come from playing that I've already found.
Unlike the traditional CEO role, the 2001 Premiership winner will handle the football operations side of things and will be guided by an advisory board.
Matt will effectively be the link between the football operations and the commercial team.
After finishing his playing career in England, Gidley Sr. has spent the last few months working as the club's business development manager and says that role has enabled him to form some solid relationships.
I'll be working closely with these guys to ensure that, through the Wayne Bennett era and then post the Wayne Bennett era, that we're successful for a very long time.
Someone he'll be also working closely with, younger brother Kurt, who is, of course, the club's captain.
There'll still be a bit of cheek. He's the boss, and as I say, I think he's always been the boss in a way, being a bigger brother.
The Gidleys clearly on board with Nathan Tinkler's vision of a Hunter-dominated team.
No matter what local team you're playing for, local school or even a backyard, that if you can demonstrate the attitudes and the aptitudes that we're looking for, then we'll give you an opportunity to come and represent your hometown.
Matt Gidley will officially take the helm once the club's privatisation is complete in a few weeks. Kate Haberfield, NBN News.
You could be forgiven for thinking this wintry landscape lies in Tasmania. Snow on the ground and Tassie devils abound. But 50 of the endangered marsupials live at the Devil Ark, nestled in the Barrington Tops. Here, the Australian Reptile Park's devil carers have trapped 5. They each have to be scanned, weighed and treated for parasites.
We like to keep a general regular check on their weight just to make sure everybody's feeding naturally and also very healthy.
It's now a year since the Devil Ark project began, and every one of the animals is putting on the right amount of weight. Well, it's a mere 2 degrees here at the moment, and that's not even including the wind chill factor. But while we're all feeling very cold and uncomfortable, the Tassie Devils are absolutely thriving in the wintry weather. And they're well on their way to making the Arc their own.
We provided some structure for them to start with. However, they only used that for a short time, and now they've started to dig their own burrows.
Inside those burrows, tiny families are being made.
And it's very exciting news for us that we have confirmed some joeys in pouches. So come springtime, there'll be little babies around.
80% of the Devils' wild population in Tasmania has already been wiped out by the deadly facial tumour disease. So this disease-free conservation and breeding program success is paramount.
The single most important project on the mainland in my eyes at the moment. Without our help, these guys are basically extinct.
Visitors aren't yet allowed at the Devil Arc, but with a dusting of snow settling over the Barrington tops, there's sure to be plenty of traffic in the mountains over the next few months. Madeline McKell, NBN News.
Sunrise on a very cold morning, the silence broken by the deafening sound of FA-18s. Flying in formation, it was mission complete for 5 of the best fighter pilots in our Air Force.
They are the cream of the current crop, without a shadow of a doubt.
Now back at Williamtown, the group has just finished training to become fighter combat instructors, or you could call them real-life Top Guns.
They've essentially been in Darwin for the last month under wartime conditions where they've been required to adapt and change their tactics depending on the ever-evolving war.
It's certainly not an easy road to get here. These Top Guns have undergone up to 10 years training, including an intensive 5-month course. And after some celebrating with loved ones, it's straight back to work.
Some of the guys will go straight into instructing at the school. Got one fella who's posted overseas to fly F-22s in the US Air Force. And some of the guys will go out to the squadrons to just be the sort of experts there to train the guys who are already fighter pilots.
That overseas posting goes to Buster here, who's off to Alaska for 3 years.
So we become a squadron FCI, so we look after the 12 or 14 guys in the squadron and we teach them how to best employ the weapons that the aircraft has available to them and the air power as a whole.
But is it anything like that famous Tom Cruise movie?
Not quite as glamorous as that. There's a bit more blood, sweat and tears.
Not as glamorous, but every bit as elite. Kate Haberfield, NBN News.
I got an opportunity playing for my local school to come and make a career here at Newcastle, so I'm hoping that we can bring more local kids through.
A David and Goliath battle on a freezing night at Bear Park, and with pleasantries exchanged, the Jets were straight down to business. A perfectly weighted pass in the opening minutes from Ruben Zadkovic found Jeremy Brockie, who nodded onto Western keeper Tim Pratt, followed by a Ryan Griffiths header that just went wide of the mark. Brockie then opened the scoring 8 minutes in on the end of a clever volley from Labino Haliti. Captain for the night, Joe Boylehouse, put his side ahead 2-0 when he carved up Western's defence. A soft goal to Haliti then made it 3-0. He made it 2 in 2 minutes after picking up the crumbs of a Brockie strike. The Jets' imposing defence meant keeper Matthew Nash was rarely troubled, Western's only goal coming when Robert Holt slotted home after some penalty box pinball. It was no comeback though. A sweet strike from Zadkovic was cleverly stopped, but Brockie confidently slotted away his second to make it 5-1. The Jets blooded several fringe players in the second half, running out 7-1 winners. Blake Doyle, NBN News.
Aged just 5 and 6, Mia Doyle and Ashley Bayer are skating stars of the future. The pair is among a group of 20 youngsters from the Hunter Ice Skating Stadium, hand-picked to perform on this famous rink. And if they're nervous, it's not showing.
Good to go.
The group boasts many young champions. But all, it seems, aspire to this.
Every single one of them that was here, I came and saw it, and so it's just such an honour to be skating in part of the show. It's like my dream to do Disney on Ice. I've always watched it like every year.
Their coach is a past Disney performer.
They've got a great opportunity to feel what it's like to be a professional skater, and it gives them something to strive for in the future.
Meanwhile, the cast of Worlds of Fantasy rehearsed this afternoon ahead of tonight's opening, featuring characters from Cars, Tinkerbell, The Little Mermaid and The Lion King. The show runs until Sunday.
Police delving deeper to discover the truth. As divers scoured Lake Macquarie, detectives waited for a potential breakthrough in one of the region's shooting cases.
We've recently received information that the firearm used in the homicide at Bolton Point on the 19th of March may have been dumped in the lake.
James Nolan, a labourer and father of one, was shot at point-blank range. The 42-year-old and his brother had gone to this home, only one left alive. The incident rocked the tiny street.
I couldn't see anything because it was so dark, but I heard a man crying, and he was just saying, he's dead.
About 10 to 9, big bang, fireworks, that's what I thought it was, and yeah, very loud.
Since that time, we've charged a man with murder and a female with accessory after the fact.
But detectives are now certain someone else was in the heavily secured house at the time, and a weapon could hold the key. The search has now been going for 2 hours and so far there's no luck. The divers are using metal detectors to overcome the poor visibility at the bottom of the lake. By this afternoon, however, the search was called off, but it'll be expanded over the next few days.
We'd be looking at anyone who had seen anyone suspicious in this area at Warners Bay off the Esplanade, sometime after 9 or between 9 and midnight, at least on the 19th of March.
Nat Wallace, NBN News.
Newcastle MP Tim Owen was today lobbied by the women who run Newcastle's Domestic Violence Resource Centre. They want his Liberal colleagues to provide funding to the tune of $150,000 a year to keep the service up and running.
It was a pilot project that's been going for almost a year now. It has been utilised by over 500 members of the Newcastle community, and that's not just women and children, it's actually grandparents, parents, young people.
The centre is the only one of its kind in Newcastle and is linked to the Jenny's Place Women's Refuge. It helps people living with domestic violence through every traumatic stage, providing specialised counselling and even post-crisis care. Mr Owen appears convinced of its value, but warns the state's purse strings are extremely tight.
I'm very supportive of looking for some ongoing funding. So we've organised a meeting with Minister Goward on Monday afternoon, so I will be there to ensure that we push the case as strongly as we can.
Those behind the service say demand is increasing daily, and unless the funding comes through, the centre will close in August.
It's going to leave a gap in service, and it's going to leave a lot of women and children unsafe.
Madeline McKell, NBN News.
Mannering Park, just one suburb at the centre of a tug-of-war.
We're not Lake Macquarie, we're Central Coast.
But some at Lake Macquarie Council think that should change.
Well, what we've asked as a general business item is the General Manager to meet with both the General Manager from Wyong and Gosford and express an interest.
An interest in acquiring suburbs immediately south of the current border. The boundary would move to include Mannering Park, Gwandolin and Chain Valley Bay. For Lake Macquarie, that would mean more ratepayers.
It could be said that it would be a cash grab or a land grab, but in reality, councils do provide services for rate incomes.
The border communities are largely underdeveloped, and with Gosford and Wyong councils considering a merger, the Local Progress Association fears the lack of infrastructure could get worse.
Well, the whole thing that we've got to think about, if they do merge, it's a very big area and it's our waterways that are a big concern here.
It's about getting a better deal.
It is, yeah, I think so. Better deal with council.
But before anything is signed, it seems everyone agrees. More talk is needed.
There would be some geographic logic in what is being discussed here. But we have to remember that we're talking about people and we're talking about communities.
It's the community's decision. The community, I believe, think they are part, and I believe they are part of the Central Coast.
Nat Wallace, NBN News.
The complete remediation of the massive former BHP steelworks is in sight. Today, the Hunter Development Corporation signed off on a multi-million-dollar contract for the final stage of the clean-up project.
That contract's been awarded to Darracon. It's nearly $20 million worth of work, and it's going to go on for about 12 months and in relation to a significant part of the former BHP site.
Darracon will be responsible for remediating 38 hectares of land shown here in blue, although it's not yet known what will be built at the site once it's all clean.
This particular contract is on work on land that the Port Corporation will own and will form part of their Mayfield site, the port-related activity that hope to be able to get a range of uses up and going in years to come.
There's some good news for nearby residents too. With BHP Billiton now having finished its remediation of the Hunter River, heavy vehicle traffic along Industrial Drive should ease.
I think the community can expect a considerable diminution of truck movements in the short term.
Madeline McKell, NBN News.
Despite near-freezing conditions, the Olyroos were given a warm welcome by 3,000 Novocastrians. Qatar-based referee Abdul Rahman Abdu wasn't keeping his cool, dishing out several yellow cards which seemed to frustrate everyone. The home side, though, took advantage, Rocco Visconti combining with Jason Hoffman for the Olyroos opener. The Mayfield product ecstatic, but things weren't going quite as smooth for current Jet Marko Jezic, who missed 2 golden opportunities. Yemen tried to retaliate, but its few chances came and went, while at the other end Hoffman made it look all too easy. With Jezic off, Aaron Moy took up the attack in the second, and given Visconti's speed out wide, it wasn't long before Hoffman had a hometown hat-trick. The attention quickly shifted to Moyes' handball. Afterwards, he was booked for kicking the ball into an opponent's face. It didn't hurt his confidence, making it 4-0 in the 68th minute. And he later produced this effort from 30 metres out before Hoffman was denied another goal due to a late offside call. The Olyroos happily settling for a 4-0 result. Kevin Metham, NBN News. It's a new look halves combination keeping everyone happy, and after his stellar debut, it seems everyone wants to know more about halfback Ryan Stig. The Knights having a bit of Top Gear inspired fun with his name on their website.
I know the Roosters will know a little bit more about Ryan, and he faces a little bit bigger challenge, but he should take some confidence out of week one, and if he can reproduce something like that, we'll be happy.
It's hoped the Women in League round will bring out the best in everyone, including Neville Costigan, who last night was flagged as an Origin 3 contender, not that he knew much about it.
No, don't watch the footy show. A bit too late to try to get to bed about 7 o'clock.
An early night tomorrow too for Peter Matautai, who's been called in against the same side he tore apart in round 11. Meanwhile, Newcastle's other rep side, the Rebels, face off against Illawarra this weekend in the final of the Country Championships. It's a rematch of the now infamous Cessnock clash from last year when the Rebels squandered a 16-0 lead.
One thing we said is we don't really want to let this get taken from us in our home crowd 2 years in a row. That's one thing we really set as a benchmark, and that's one thing the guys will try and set out to do.
And in a boost, Nathan Hinton has overcome an injury scare to start at halfback.
He's committed to playing the game, and obviously he's a big part of our structure, so yeah, we're happy that he's playing.
Kevin Messam, NBN News.
Apart from producing international award-winning wines, Hunter Valley Wine Country is also known for its beauty and has become a mecca for tourists. But Vignerons claim coal seam gas exploration by AGL and the threat of gas wells being erected in Broke, Pecolbin and Belford could decimate their industry, destroy the aesthetics of the land and reduce property values.
These are areas which have iconic vineyards that have been in existence for over 150 years. We don't believe coal seam gas and the intrusion that represents can coexist with vineyards.
The Hunter Valley Protection Alliance wants the state government to follow Western and South Australia's lead and create legislation which protects wine regions. It's dropped petitions at every cellar door and has also created an online version.
I think we could have well over 100,000 names on this petition, and once we get over a certain number, I think it's 10,000, they have to schedule a debate in Parliament concerning this.
When questioned on the issue today, the new State Environment Minister seemed to read straight from the Liberal Party script.
The New South Wales Government is working very hard to get an outcome on our land use. That means working with the viticulture industry, the equine industry and our farmers.
Meanwhile, an AGL spokesman has rejected the vignerons' claims, claiming the company's proven it can coexist with all land uses. Madeleine McKell, NBN News.
So that solves the problem for the farmer, it solves the culling problem of the bats for the conservation interests, and it guarantees fruit supply, particularly in the pre-Christmas period, for consumers.
Newcastle headed into the game with high hopes. Within minutes, it appeared it'd break its 4-year hoodoo against Illawarra, but the tension showed. Just like last year's Country Championships final, it was Newcastle who took its chances early, and line second rower Bo Simpson posted first points. Before too long, the defending champions caught the home side napping. Illawarra raced to a 12-6 lead when Country Player of the Year Mitch Williams stepped in to hand Chad Sharp the leveller. It was one-way traffic early in the second half. Jamie Davis's try 3.5 minutes in was soon followed by a Nathan Hinton kick that had Wyong winner Josh Mantellato written all over it. But with the title seemingly slipping away, Illawarra came up with the goods. A thrilling finale followed. Newcastle clung to a 4-point lead, 28-24, the end score. Newcastle again number one after a 4-year drought.
Unreal for Newcastle, back where she should be for a while hopefully, so we're good.
The last time Barry O'Farrell and his team was in the Hunter, they were in opposition. A lot has changed since then. Now approaching 100 days in government, the pressure is on to deliver on the long list of promises made during the election campaign. There's the much-hyped Hunter Infrastructure Fund worth $350 million, the Glendale Transport Interchange, $25 million to help the University of Newcastle set up in the CBD, a study into a new hospital in the Maitland area, just to name a few. And then there's the elephant in the room, the Newcastle rail line, a debate which has been raging on for decades.
I think the people of Newcastle and the region, they need some timelines, they need some decisions, and they need to know that this government is fair income.
Several stakeholders will meet with the Premier and his ministers tomorrow, seeking a progress report on a range of issues.
What we will see, hopefully, is a staged program of a rollout of some of these projects. That's what we're hoping to see, and certainly that's what the business community is wanting to contribute towards.
Following those talks, the public will get to come face-to-face with the government at a community cabinet meeting. It's unclear if any decisions or announcements will be made at that forum, but we are being told progress is being made behind the scenes.
Parliament's an interesting place, but it's a bit like a duck. It all looks serene on the surface, but under the water the legs are going very fast.
Kate Haberfield, NBN News.
there's not a lot of public awareness of it. Like, people know blind people and stuff like that, but it's not one of the ones I don't think that people donate to all the time as much as they do other things.
As an elite athlete, I always felt really quite selfish with what I chose to do, so it's really fun now for me and rewarding to feel like I'm sort of doing things for other people a little bit more.
A sombre start. Broadmeadow had lost one of its greats, former KB United striker Slav Katalovsky, and the club was keen to pay him the ultimate tribute. But for one of the few times this season, the competition leaders would have to come from behind. Harry Maguire putting Lake Macquarie up 1-0. Magic created plenty of chances, but time again were unable to find the net. The pressure began to show in the second half, and before too long, the Roosters were the ones crowing. Dylan Murphy made it 2-0. Former Mariner Andre Gumprick chimed in minutes later to help Liam Thornton seal the win. Lake Macquarie now a clear fourth on the ladder.
Almost unrecognisable, this torched mess was Nathan Tinkler's dream car, a Ferrari California, one of just a handful in Australia. The wreckage was found in bushland near Raymond Terrace this afternoon, 48 hours after the sports car was stolen from Tinkler's Merriweather home.
A $500,000 motor vehicle doesn't go missing every day.
No one was home at the mining magnate's beachside mansion today, but his family was when the Ferrari was stolen early yesterday.
They were in a different area of the house and as a result they didn't hear the perpetrators.
It's believed the offenders gained access through an unlocked sliding door on the second level of the home.
Pretty sure as a result of this there'll be a lot more security at the premises.
As well as the Ferrari, a laptop, digital camera, watches and computers were stolen. Police don't believe the offenders knew the sports car was in the garage.
There has been some similar incidents in the area where vehicles have gone missing.
The Ferrari is undergoing forensic examination. Police are still hunting the offenders and are asking anyone with information to contact Crime Stoppers. Lauren Bladwell, NBN News.
Barry O'Farrell and his front bench are due here shortly for the first regional community cabinet meeting of this new government. But as you can see, it's going to be quite a hostile reception with a large rally already underway protesting against public sector wage caps. But this afternoon, at least, it was all positive at the announcement of the Australian Transplant Games. Alec and Adam mucking around like any healthy, fun-loving boys. You might be surprised to learn this lucky pair is actually transplant recipients. They'll be among the competitors at the next Australian Transplant Games to be held in the Hunter.
The purpose for these games is to publicly validate the people who receive a transplant are well enough to compete in various sporting events, and in general, they have received a second chance of life.
Every time these games have been held, there's a spike in organ donation.
That spike equates to an extra 117 transplants each Games year. The Premier and Health Minister were only too happy to spruik the benefits of this event, both to organ donation rates and to the Hunter economy, but weren't as forthcoming on exactly when we'll see some election promises rolled out. Instead, saying we'll probably have to wait another few months at least.
So in a sense, new monies don't flow until that 6th of September budget. And as we make decisions that reflect our election commitments that will be on it, you'll see it principally around that budget time.
Kate Haberfield, NBN News. $100,000. That was the price the Working Party claims it was originally quoted to test the figs. It was deemed excessive and voted against. Now dynamic testing is back on the agenda after it was revealed the cost would actually be much lower.
We could, at a standing cost of $14,000, have all 14 trees assessed at least once.
It's not a large amount of money, and I think that it would find some meaningful baseline information.
The Working Party will now recommend dynamic testing, which monitors the tree's movement in the wind, be carried out before Council's insurance expires on August 31.
The community really feels that they need something a bit more tangible and a bit more concrete to justify the removal.
Also considered during a meeting yesterday, pruning several metres off the top of the canopy, but committee members and the Mayor agree that should only follow a full risk assessment.
How do you know where to prune? How do you know what's going to dismember the interlocking? There needs to be a baseline, and that baseline can be best achieved by dynamic testing.
Lauren Bladwell, NBN News.
I like to feel that I'm doing a little bit of good in my life.
It was certainly a shaky start. With new-look halves and plenty of injury-related gaps, the Knights were almost expected to lose. But what happened from there on? Please coach Rick Stone.
Oh look, that's probably as good as any win we've had.
A win that takes the Knights to 6th on the ladder and leaves the former premiers 3 from the bottom.
We prepare hard to play hard. We just didn't quite do enough of that today.
Today we just probably let ourselves down. There's no doubt about that. And it's the first time I've been a little bit disappointed in the boys.
There was no disappointment with Tyrone Roberts and Ryan Stigg. The Knights' new halves combination just about had a hand in every point.
You know, it's a big job, both young players. One's played 1 game, one's played 4 games. 20-year-old and a 21-year-old.
Their future rests on Kurt Gidley's hamstring strain.
I'd like to think he'd be up running by Wednesday of next week. That's what our physio is telling us.
Neville Costigan is the other injury concern. He'll likely have knee surgery this week, while it'll also be a nervous wait when it comes to Wes Nagama. The club denied it made him captain to get his signature for next season.
I'm not under pressure from the club to make any rush decisions, so it's something that we'll get noted out and sort of hopefully the next week.
Nat Wallace, NBN News. Most riders were keen for a taste of the Rocky Mountain air. It's the only place where Chad Reed has never won.
This place has been tough for me in the past, so a podium result would be good, but the win is always the sweetest.
And from the start, this Curry motocross champion appeared on track. For the first time in his career, Reed has been unable to break free in the championship. He's still on top after 3 outright wins in 5 races, but there are plenty in line to topple the dirt bike king. And before too long, victory at Thunder Valley seemed to slip away. Reed unable to bridge the gap. Dungy, a 20-year-old from Minnesota, claimed his first outright win. And he now trails Reed by just 8 points in the championship.
This run feels really good, you know, I just try to keep continuing it, but bike was awesome. Got to thank the man above and my whole family. It feels good to get this one.
I just struggled in the ruts a little bit. Those guys were really, really committed, and I just didn't have pace. So 3-3's safe at this point, and yeah, I got a little work to do.
Nat Wallace, NBN News.